boys and girls, and welcome to MVBC Kids. We're so glad you could join us today as we look at Esther Part 2. But before story time, let's sing a couple songs. Let's start off singing the B-I-B-L-E. Ready? The B-I-B-L-E, yes, that's the book for me. I stand alone on the Word of God, the B-I-B-L-E. Bible! Good singing. And now we're going to sing My Lord Knows the Way Through the Wilderness. All I have to do is follow. Ready? Here we go. My Lord knows the way through the wilderness. All I have to do is follow. My Lord knows the way through the wilderness. All I have to do is follow. Strength for today is mine all the way, and all that I need for tomorrow. My Lord knows the way through the wilderness. All I have to do is follow. Great job. Now listen as we start Esther Part 2. All right, boys and girls, it's time to start our lesson back with Esther, where we left off last week. Queen Esther had been chosen to be the next queen for King Ahasuerus during these days. He was the king of the Medo-Persian Empire at that time, and there was a secret that Esther had to keep. Do you remember what that secret was? That's right, she was a Jew, and her uncle Mordecai had told her to keep it a secret so that no one would know that she was a Jew. Also, we left off the story at a time where a wicked, evil man named Haman had become King Ahasuerus' second man in charge, and he did not like the Jews. Do you remember why he didn't like the Jews? That's right. Mordecai, Esther's uncle, worked in the palace at the king's gate, and he would not bow down when Haman walked by. He would not bow down to Haman, and Haman was a very proud man, and he didn't like that at all. He thought everyone should bow down to him, and so he demanded to find out who he was and why he wouldn't bow down to Haman. He found out Mordecai was a Jew, and because of that, he said, "We need to destroy all the Jews in the land." He went before King Ahasuerus and told him that there were people in this kingdom who thought they didn't have to obey the laws. And he said, "Oh, King Ahasuerus, we need to get rid of these people. Don't you agree that everyone in this kingdom has to obey the laws of the land?" And the king said, "Of course, O Haman, of course. They all need to obey." And because of that, Haman said, "I'll offer 10,000 talents of silver if you'll put a law into effect that we could get rid of all of these people who won't obey the law of the land." Well, King Ahasuerus said, "Don't worry about paying money for this. We will put this decree out, though." And to make it a law, Haman wrote it out, and the king put his stamp with his ring on it. And remember, when any law was made and had the king's stamp on it, no one could change the law, not even the king himself. And so a new law has been declared that all the Jews will have to die. That brings us to the part of the story where we pick up today in Esther chapter 4. Well, when Mordecai heard about Haman's plan to kill all of the Jews, he tore his clothes and put on sackcloth and ashes and went around the city, weeping and crying out bitterly. He was so upset to hear the news that all the Jews would be killed. When Esther heard about Mordecai's distress, she sent a servant, one of the king's servants, with clothes for Mordecai to change into out of the sackcloth, but he refused to put them on. Hathach was sent out again by Esther to find out what was wrong with Mordecai. Mordecai gave him the message to send to Queen Esther about the new law that Haman had put into place and how he had planned to kill all of the Jews. He asked Hathach to tell Esther to go in to the king and beg for mercy for the Jewish people. He went back and reported to Queen Esther. And Esther said, "How can this be? Anyone who approaches the king's inner chamber without being summoned is put to death. Unless the king will hold out his golden scepter, then that person could be put to death. And I haven't been summoned to see the king for the 30 days. Esther's words were reported back to Mordecai. He sent her back this message. Just because you are a queen, Esther, doesn't mean that you won't die too. You're a Jew. If you remain silent, all of the Jews could die. Maybe the Lord brought you here to be the queen for such a time as this." Esther sent a reply to Mordecai and said, "Gather all the Jews in the kingdom and pray and fast for me for 3 days. I'll join you in praying and fasting and asking for God to go before me and protect me as I go and present this to the king. If I die, I die." Chapter 5. On the 3rd day, Esther put on her very fanciest outfit and stood in the inner court of the king's palace and went into the king, not knowing if this would be the day she would die. But when the king saw her, she found favor in his sight, and he held out his golden scepter to her to spare her life. "What is your request, Queen Esther? I will give it to you, even the half of the kingdom." She said, "O king, I would like to invite you and Haman to a banquet that I have prepared." So the king and Haman went to the banquet that Esther had prepared. "Now, Queen Esther, what is it that you want to ask me?" the king said. "I would like to invite you back again tomorrow for another banquet, King and Haman. Then I will answer your question." Haman left the palace in the best mood. He was so excited. He had just dined with the king and queen all by himself. He must be very important, he thought to himself. But on his way home, he saw Mordecai again. And again, Mordecai did not bow down to him, and it made Haman angry all over again. He rushed back home to tell his friends and family about his day with the king and queen and how he had also been invited back to join them again the next day. He must be pretty special. But then he remembered Mordecai, and it made him angry all over again. He said, "I can't be happy. I can't even enjoy this banquet thinking about this Jew Mordecai who won't bow down to me. Something must be done right away." His wife and friends had an idea. They said, "Oh, Haman, you should hang Mordecai on the gallows. You should build gallows super tall, 75 feet tall, and you could hang Mordecai as an example to all the others and kill him right here, and you won't have to think about him again, and it would be a good example to the rest of the kingdom that they must show you respect." What a wonderful idea. Haman loved it. So that night he set about to build gallows. Chapter 6. That night the king couldn't sleep, so he ordered the book of the Chronicles to be read that told all of the happenings of the kingdom. When the king was read about Mordecai and how he had exposed a plot to kill him, he asked what honor was given to Mordecai for doing this, saving my life. The attendants looked through the book and said, "Nothing has been done, O king." He said, "Call Haman in here. I need to speak to him." The king asked Haman, "Oh, Haman, I have a question for you." Of course, Haman thought that he must have been one of the king's special advisors. He said, "What should I do for someone whom the king wishes to honor? What do you think would be a good idea?" Well, once again, Haman only could think about himself, and he was sure that's who the king was talking about. And he said, "Oh, king, I think you should let that person that you want to honor wear the king's robes and ride in the king's chariots all through the town and let people call out and see how important that person is." Of course, when Haman was giving these suggestions, he thought that this was going to be done to him. "Then, O king, get the king's most noble prince to lead the horse through the city and cry out, 'This is the one whom the king wants to honor. This is the one whom the king wants to honor.' Go at once and get the robe and the horse," the king commanded, "and then do as you have suggested and find Mordecai, the Jew who sits at the king's gate. Do every single thing you just mentioned to Mordecai, for it is Mordecai that I want to honor." Haman swallowed hard. Seriously? This was not good news. Haman had to go robe Mordecai with the king's robe and put him on a horse and lead Mordecai through the city, exclaiming, "This is a man whom the king wants to honor." Wow, I think he needed to swallow his pride after all of that. Humiliated, Haman rushed home in grief and told his family what had happened. "Mordecai the Jew got honored through the streets today and got to wear the king's clothes and ride in the king's chariot. And I had to holler out for everyone to show honor to Mordecai. My day has been ruined." Oh, Haman, when they find out what you've done and what your plans are to kill Mordecai, it's not going to be good. What's going to happen? At that moment, the king's servant arrived to take Haman to the banquet that Queen Esther had prepared for he and the king. Come back next time to find out the end of the story, to find out what happens to Haman. Here he is, ready to hang Mordecai in his own yard. And yet now he's had to walk Mordecai around the city and say, "This is the one whom the king wants to honor." Wow, God definitely has changed things around. And I wonder what will happen next in the story. Come back next time to find out what the king does to Mordecai, to Esther, and to Haman. I love you all. Goodbye.